It's March 2020 and we're sitting there. The world has shut down. The government is telling us that there's this horrible disease out there where we can no longer live our old lives and we have to basically sit in our homes and not do anything but stress and have anxiety about the future. At that point, a lot of folks received a phone call from their bank offering them a lifeline. It was so easy. The bank called, they said, "Would you like a forbearance?" And most people said, "Yes, of course. I don't want to pay my mortgage for a month, 2 months, 6 months, however long the forbearance." And many people took that opportunity to go into forbearance. A huge number, millions and millions of folks took forbearances of a temporary nature at that time so that they could have a break from their mortgage and see what would happen. However, that process seemed very easy, and now we're coming out of forbearance, and the process that was very easy to get into is now much more difficult to come out of. A lot of people are wondering if the things that were promised to them when they took the forbearance are actually not going to happen. A lot of people are facing situations where they don't know how they're going to come out of forbearance and if taking the forbearance was a mistake. That when you took the forbearance, it was super easy. The bank said, "Hey, you want a forbearance?" Yes. Sometimes you didn't have to sign anything. Sometimes it was done over the phone, or if they sent you something electronically, all you had to do was touch your screen and boom, forbearance, no mortgage payments, everybody was happy. Now, they were promising that everything was going to be easy when you came out of forbearance, but now what we're seeing is that a lot of those promises are not being kept. Now, I'm seeing 4 different scenarios that are causing people extreme anxiety about coming off forbearance. The number one thing that we're seeing, and this is actually happening across the board, are applications. Now, they're not supposed to really ask you for documents if you have a CARES Act mortgage. What that means is if you have Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, or USDA, they're supposed to do what's called no-doc reviews for forbearance, post-forbearance help. So if they're offering you a loan modification or they're offering you something like a deferral of your the amount of money that you owe during the forbearance, they're not supposed to ask you for documents. However, other banks who are not the ones that we mentioned, that are not guaranteed by the FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, USDA, or the VA, which is about 30% of the mortgages out there, those folks are asking your application because they want to evaluate your financial position in order to see if you qualify for something. Now, asking them to fill out an application if you have a CARES Act mortgage or not, for a lot of people cause a lot of anxiety because it implies that you're being evaluated for something that you could be denied for. That's a very stressful situation. Nobody likes to be tested. We're going to talk about applications in a second. But the other 3 things that we're looking at are that when they do offer you something, it's a limited offer, meaning that they don't offer you everything that you need. They say to you, the bank says to you, "Okay, we're only going to pay for the interest and the principal you didn't pay. We're going to put that at the back end, but you owe us the escrow," and they make you pay that back over 12 months or 24 months. A lot of people are in a very stressful situation because they can't pay that. So they're put into a situation where they might face foreclosure. The other thing is that after the applications are filled out, there are long waiting periods for decisions. This is actually kind of normal when you apply for loan modification. Long waiting periods up to 90 days is the norm, but people don't like that. Obviously, being in a limbo state of 90 days before you know if you're going to be offered a loan modification is extremely stressful and causes people extreme anxiety. The last thing, obviously, that a lot of people are facing, and which is the worst, is denial. The banks are saying, "No, we can't help you," and they're basically putting them back into a situation where they're being denied for a loan modification or some sort of deferral of the forbearance amounts. And obviously, that causes stress because that means you have to pay back everything in a lump sum. That's not the norm, but that does happen in some situations. Now, Applications. Applications are terrifying for a lot of people. Like I said, they imply that they can say no. When we apply for something like a job, or we apply for a credit card or for a mortgage, there's always that stress that, well, we're not gonna get it and we're being evaluated and who knows what's gonna happen. This is very stressful for people. It's terrifying when you are facing foreclosure, and obviously that was not promised when they were offering forbearances over the phone. Nobody told us that we would have to make applications at the end, but that's what's happening. So what I'm telling you and what I tell people is you just got to do it. Applications are just part of life when you are dealing with this particular issue. The banks have the right to, they might not necessarily be evaluating you, but it's a bureaucracy. So they have the right to create a file, and they have the right to ask you to fill certain things out so that they can evaluate at least on a minimal level if you qualify. Now, if that's what I mean is, that applies to the CARES Act people. The people who don't have CARES Act mortgages, those folks are being evaluated for their financial situation. That is a yes or no, approved or disapproved situation. If you do not have enough income, or your income is not presented in the right way to these banks, the banks will deny you for a loan modification or for some sort of assistance. So the application is deadly serious for you. The CARES Act people, it's more of a formality. The non-CARES Act people, it is not a formality. It is an absolute necessity that you do this properly so that you get the loan modification or the deferral that you're applying for. But we still have to realize that this only relates to money, and anything is possible nowadays with loan modifications. The banks are being more flexible than they've ever been before, so don't panic. You don't need to panic, because if you panic, you get nothing. Panicking basically results in you losing your home. Freaking out over this situation means that you're not going to do things properly, and you're going to put yourself in a situation where you could have possibly gotten some sort of assistance, but you panicked and you didn't do the process properly, and you end up losing your home. There are things that people can do, even the folks who have no other options. There's the HALF program, which I've talked about in many of my videos. There's also bankruptcy, Chapter 13, which can help people who are in a situation that they cannot pay their mortgages. The bankruptcy situation is a last resort, very powerful tool that people have to save their homes. You need to keep your head together, apply for everything that's out there, and do this with time. Don't wait for the last minute. That's another part of panicking. Panicking causes procrastination, because you'd rather not deal with the problem. Not dealing with the problem is basically going to cause you to lose your home. So make sure that you focus on what you're supposed to do. Make sure that you talk to your bank, you stay on top of the issue so that you do not lose your home for reasons that are not necessary.